Hello and welcome back to our remote management Q&A series. In this series, I have the pleasure of interviewing local business leaders as well as Versature's management team to explore the different ways that leaders are supporting their teams as they navigate this pandemic. Recruiting new employees is an important and vital part of any business. Moving from resume to candidate to employee is a process that can take a fair amount of time and effort to ensure that you're selecting the right person for both the role and your organization. Within the current world, some organizations are downsizing, while some are growing or having to pivot their business and recruit new individuals to fill necessary positions to keep themselves operating. Recruiting and hiring talent remote has a lot of challenges that many businesses never would have thought they were going to run into. Overcoming these challenges can provide clarity and peace of mind when making hiring decisions. This week, I'm excited to introduce Jeremy Lumsden, founder and owner of Lumsden Recruiting. Jeremy has served as Versature's recruiting consultant for nearly a year and has been instrumental in building our team with the highest quality candidates. Thanks for joining us, Jeremy. To start off, I was hoping you could give us a bit of background about yourself, how you started a career in recruiting, and how you came to opening your own consulting business.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on the call today. So it's really, I think, just sort of a lucky start or entry into recruiting for me. I once upon a time started recruiting with a Loblaws in Ottawa, and that came from I was just back from my first year of school in Toronto, and I had no job, and I was looking everywhere for a job. And I met someone at Loblaw who decided to offer me a position in recruiting, which was super confusing because I was like wearing a hoodie and I was like unshaved and had ripped jeans on and stuff, and I was like, why am I getting a real job? What is happening? But yeah, it's been I fell in love with it pretty much immediately. So I went from there to agencies for a little while, and then I've been in and out of school. So I kind of went back to school for a little bit and decided to start my own consulting company. And now I get to work with this awesome company called Versature. So the transition has been pretty fantastic. I really like the model that I'm working with because I feel like I get to work really closely with Versature, and it provides more value to both Versature and myself as a recruiter.
Wonderful. I'm sure you've probably experienced, at least in the last 2 months, seeing the landscape. Businesses of all sizes have really been hit hard by this pandemic, grappling with so many unforeseen challenges. Many of them have had to, lay off their workers in an effort to stay afloat. Of course, this is never an easy decision, but it's left thousands of Canadians without jobs during an already challenging economic time. As a recruiter, do you have any advice for job seekers who are looking for a new role?
Yeah, it's sort of a difficult situation for sure. I've actually had some calls with a couple of people recently that have been let go from their jobs, and it can be hard to see the opportunity when you're, in the middle of such a pandemic situation, I guess, and you also just lost your job. That's a devastating thing on a regular day. But if you can see the opportunity, it's actually pretty huge. There are companies like Versature, for example, who are doing all right with this pandemic, and they're still hiring. So there's a huge opportunity to change industries, which I think is big. And I mean, with the stimulus packages in Canada, the opportunity to reinvent yourself is a little bit more tangible. I mean, I think generally speaking, if you lost your job on a regular day, all these things aren't available to you. So that kind of changes what is going on as well. Yeah. So if you're a job searcher, you have to think about the transferable skills that you want to take to new markets, and I think that you have to think about how you would apply those skills with intention. So when I'm talking to candidates, I really like it when they can tell me what their skills are and how they think it could apply to the company that we're talking about.
Nice. So yeah, here at Versature, we're incredibly fortunate to continue operating at full capacity. As a cloud-based communication provider, we continue to serve our clients while working remotely. As you probably know, we're continuing to grow our team hiring for roles in sales, sales development, onboarding, and more. Um, how have you shifted your recruitment strategies since we started self isolating?
So recruitment has definitely changed a little bit right now. I seem to be getting more luck in reaching out to people since everyone's just at home. So I would say that I see basically two different approaches. I see either candidates who have a job and are very concerned about um, what leaving a job would look like because they have stability in a very unstable time. Or we have candidates that have lost their work because of COVID or just job searchers in general. Um, and so I think for me, having a lot more conversations with people who are affected by this pandemic is really positive in terms of just networking and being able to get my name out there a little bit. It's kind of that branding piece. Um, so I would say that I'm having a lot more conversations where I'm describing the structure of Versature and its parent companies in hopes of answering the stability question. In terms of candidates that are not employed, I'm much more drawn to job hunters that are still confident in their skills. I would like to say I'm having more conversation with varied types of people and different backgrounds that I probably wouldn't necessarily have all the time otherwise.
So, with that, with the whole recruiting angle, you've mentioned a lot about skills and various skill sets, but a very critical part of the recruitment process is assessing if the candidate is a good personality fit for the company or sometimes the role. Uh, Obviously, much easier to do in person rather than behind a screen. Um, what are the key differences that you found between like the in-person interviews that you would run and running virtual interviews, and how have you managed to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, that I mean, it's still a learning process, and we're still figuring out as we go. But I think part of it is that my conversations in general are just like lengthier because I really do want to get that feel for fit. Um, I'm not a fan of increasing the interview process and letter in general. Like I find a leggy process can kind of you can lose people in the mix. But I think given our current circumstances, it's hugely helpful to have more touch points with people. Um, and I think that is something that's helping. So we've definitely scheduled more video chats with different people in our company to try and get as many interviews out of those same people as possible and as many different perspectives around what we have offered. And so far, fingers crossed, that seems to be working well for us. Yeah.
Awesome. So to sort of flip it around, I'm sure that when you're interviewing a prospective recruit, they're also interviewing the company you're interviewing for as well. They want to know what the culture is like, what the space is like, uh, get a better sense of the people that would be managing them. Uh, Really, they're trying to get a better understanding of the company as a whole. What have you been doing to illustrate, in this case, Versature's corporate culture from afar? And have there been any specific issues that have come up, and how have you mitigated them?
I think that's actually a pretty good point for me, and Versature is in a great position in this respect. There's a lot of media that can talk about Versature's reputation, not only with its clients, but its internal employees and its strong sense of culture. So there's a ton of examples that I can pull out and talk about, including my own examples of working at Versature and what the culture feels like. But we've also done a good job of having some materials online to review. So internal employees and customers dealing with Versature can get a sense of what's happening. We also have a video on our careers page that I'm referencing more and more these days that actually kind of gives a virtual tour of our office space. So you can kind of see, you can add a little more imagery to what that culture would feel like.
Awesome. When sort of having that initial conversation, do is that something that you bring up for them to go look at, or is it something that they kind of tell you about that they've seen?
It definitely varies. I mean, I had a call with one guy today, and I was really impressed at how much in like research he's done on Versature already. He kind of knew about our history and some of the culture already, but it's still something that I can reference. He hadn't seen that video in particular, so that's a pretty easy one to find. So I can let him know about it, and I can generally give him a heads up, like, hey, if you're like digging into it a little more, these are the kind of things that you're going to see, and it's very much a reality for me.
Wonderful. So as the person moves through the process and say they're a successful candidate, welcoming them to the team requires more than, just an employee handbook, brief orientation. Within the first few days, you should be able to provide clear expectations surrounding the business's operations, the new hire's role, beyond what was shared in the interview process, while also sort of inviting them into the culture, getting them familiar with the people, and finding out what everything is all about. Obviously, the onboarding process is critical. What are some recommendations you would have for managers who are going to be virtually onboarding new employees during this next time?
So this is still something we're learning about as well. We have extended one remote offer, and so that person's just starting to onboard with us, and we have started onboarding another person on a different team. So generally speaking, the way that we onboard people at Versature involves them sitting with other departments so that they can see how Versature operates as a whole and how all the departments work together. So we're still able to set up meetings with other departments. However, it is a little bit more of a challenge, not being able to sit directly beside someone, and shadowing is definitely more of a difficult thing in that situation. I think basically the strategies that I've seen so far is that constant communication is a huge factor, in that onboarding a really motivated hire, so someone who wants to learn about your culture or your corporation and is just like eager to take in all the materials is like a huge advantage. And they actually don't really get distracted the same way. So like they've from our experience, they've been able to go through a lot.
Awesome. So that wraps up our remote management episode on virtual recruitment. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for sharing your experience and insights with us. Should you have any questions about this episode or want to learn more about recruiting during this pandemic, you can find Jeremy's contact information in the transcript below. As always, thanks for listening and have a wonderful day.